enough. We're reading about that in the Bhagavatam at the moment. At the departure of his own spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada had written, "On that day, O my master, I made a cry of grief. I was not able to tolerate the absence of you, my Guru." And so on November the 14th, 1977, as the powerful news spread around the world, those who knew and loved Srila Prabhupada were gripped by a fearful, unrestricted grief. They saw everything around them in the overwhelming atmosphere of separation from Srila Prabhupada. They turned for solace to Srila Prabhupada's books. Quote, "However, the disciples and the spiritual master are never separated, because the spiritual master always keeps company with the disciple as long as the disciple follows the instructions of the spiritual master. This is called the association of Vani. Physical presence is called Vapu. As long as the spiritual master is physically present, the disciple should serve the physical body of the spiritual master. And when the spiritual master is no longer physically existing, the disciple should serve the instructions of the spiritual master." So Prabhupada's disciples were already carrying out his instructions, but now they would have to do so without the Vapu, without the opportunity of regularly seeing and being with him. At first, this was very difficult for them to face, but those who were sincere soon realized that Srila Prabhupada had, upon his departure, given them the greatest gift of all, service and separation. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So this is the difference between philosophy and personality cult. We glorify Srila Prabhupada, we glorify other devotees, but it's not a personality cult. It's because of the Vani, because of the instruction, which makes them so important. If it's just because they were a great guy, and while they're around, everybody likes them, it would be a personality cult. But because it's actually the message they're carrying, which makes them so appreciated. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 2, entitled Hiranyakashipu, King of the Demons. Text 44. Suyagyo Nanu Ayam Shete. Suyagyo Nanvayam Shete. Mudha Yam Anushochata. Mudhayam Anushochata. Ya Shruta Yo Anuvakteha. Ya Shruta Yo Nuvakteha. Sa Na Drishita Karichit. Sana Drishita Karichit. Suyagyo Nanvayam Shete. Suyagyo Nanvayam Shete. Mudhayam Anushochata. Mudhayam Anushochata. Yashrotayo Nuvakteha. Yashrotayo Nuvakteha. Sanadrishita Karichit. Sanadrishita Karichit. Suyagyo Nanvayam Shete. Mudhayam Anushochata. Yashrotayo Nuvakteha. Sanadrishita Karichit. Please chant. Ladies. Suyagya. The king named Suyagya. Nanu, indeed, I am this Shete lies. Mudha, O foolish people. Yam, whom, Anusho Chata, you cry for. Ya, he who. Shrota, the hearer. Ya, he who. Anuvakta, the speaker. Iha, in this world. Sa, he. Na, not. Drisheta, is visible. Karichit, at any time. Translation. Yamaraj continued, O lamenters, you are all fools. The person named Suyagya, for whom you lament, is still lying before you and has not gone anywhere. Then what is the cause for your lamentation? Previously he heard you and replied to you, but now, not finding him, you are lamenting. This is contradictory behavior, for you have never actually seen the person within the body who heard you and replied. There is no need for your lamentation, for the body you have always seen is lying here. Please repeat. Yamaraj continued, O lamenters, you are all fools. The person named Suyagya, for whom you lament, is still lying before you and has not gone anywhere. Then what is the cause for your lamentation? Previously he heard you and replied to you, but now not finding him, you are lamenting. This is contradictory behavior, for you have never actually seen the person within the body who heard you and replied. There is no need for your lamentation, for the body you have always seen is lying here. Srila Prabhupada's purport. This instruction by Yamaraj in the form of a boy is understandable, even for a common man. A common man who considers the body, the self, is certainly comparable to an animal. Yes, yet mahabudi kunape, da tuke sa eva gokara. But even the common man can understand that after death a person is gone. Although the body is still there, a dead man's relatives lament that the person has gone away. For a common man sees the body but cannot see the soul. As described in Bhagavad Gita, Dehino Smanyata Dehe. The soul, the proprietor of the body, is within. After death, when the breath within the nostrils has stopped, one can understand the person within the body who was hearing and replying has now gone. Therefore, in effect, the common man concludes that actually the spirit soul was different from the body and has now gone away. Thus, even a common man coming to his senses can know that the real person who was within the body and was hearing and replying was never seen. For that which was never seen, what is the need of lamentation? Om Agyanatamarandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaturmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Lagate Girim Yakripatamam Vande Shri Girim Dinataranam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Sadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Ram Hare Hare. Yamaraj continued, O lamenters, you are all fools. The person named Suyagya, for whom you lament, is still lying before you and has not gone anywhere. Then what is the cause for your lamentation? Previously he heard you and replied to you, but now not finding him, you are lamenting. This is contradictory behavior, for you have never actually seen the person within the body who heard you and replied. There is no need for your lamentation, for the body you have always seen is lying here. So this is interesting. This is mirroring Krishna's instruction to Arjuna. When Krishna begins to instruct Arjuna, what's the first thing he says to him? Sochanam vasochastvam pragyavadam shibhashase gatasunagatasum chana anushuchanti pandita. You're speaking like a pandit. Pandit, sometimes you hear this term also used in the West, like a racing pundit, right? The term pundit comes from pandit. It means learned person. So you're speaking like a learned person. You're giving so many reasons. You're speaking very eloquently, but you're actually just speaking eloquent nonsense. It doesn't actually make sense. So in terms of the spiritual understanding, then Arjuna's talks were actually just, as Prabhupada calls it, on the conventional platform or the bodily platform. So he was given so many reasons why he didn't want to engage in his duty. But Krishna didn't accept any of those reasons. He says, well, speaking learned words, you're mourning for that which is not worthy of grief. All of his excuses were on the bodily platform. And this is coming from Krishna himself. Therefore, just before Krishna's words are mentioned, it says, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. So the term Bhagavan is used there to show, Krishna is the authority here. Bhagavan means that person who's full in all six opulences. So what are those six opulences? Wealth, beauty, strength, knowledge. Yep. Yep. So we may have a little, we may possess some of these qualities to some degree, in greater or lesser degrees. But we don't possess all of them. Can you imagine someone who's extremely wealthy but is so renounced that they don't even care for it? I've heard people who have been very rich and they say, oh, money's not everything. You say, well, okay, if that's the case, then give it away. It's okay to say that when you've got lots of it, isn't it? But Krishna, he's so attached because he's the supreme proprietor. Aham Savasya Prabhavo. He's the Lord of all spiritual and material worlds, but he's not attached to them. Unlike us, we get a couple of quid in the bank and we're really attached to it, isn't it? I remember as a brahmachari, I stayed at the manor and they started giving us a small allowance, and it was actually starting to affect my mind. I was thinking, okay, they're giving us £30 a week or a month, whatever it was. I can't really buy too much with that, so I'll start saving it up and I'll buy a set of Bhagavatams, or maybe if I save it up a bit more, I can buy a harmonium or something like that. So all the while, I was just thinking, first thing I actually had to do was to buy a wallet. It just becomes complicated. You get money, what you got to do with it? Keep it safe. And then you start thinking, where can I keep it safe? And then, so eventually I went to the accounts department and says, look, this is just causing me too much trouble. Can you just not give me this? It's affecting my mind. Because I was quite happy. The temple's already looking after what I needed anyway. I was getting fed and clothed and with a place to stay. What more did we need? And I really wanted to focus on just being dependent on Krishna and not having some kind of backup plan. When I joined, I had a bank balance and a building site account. I just gave it to the temple because to me it was like a safety net. And I thought, well, let me just experience Krishna consciousness by not having this material safety net there. So, of course, taking shelter in Krishna means that we'll be tested. If we're wanting to take shelter in Krishna, then Krishna says, okay, you're really going to depend on me, or are you just going to make a show of it? So although Krishna is very wealthy, he's not attached to it. And his beauty, whatever beauty you see in this material world, is only a dim reflection of the beauty in the spiritual world. There's a nice book called Life Comes from Life. If you haven't read that, then it's highly recommended. It's morning walks transcribed into a book. And the conversations are mainly between Srila Prabhupada and Dr. Singh. Who's Dr. Singh? Srup Damdar Maharaj, one disciple, PhD scientist, disciple of Prabhupada. And he was asking all the right questions pertaining to the scientific understanding of the origin of the universe, the origin of life, etc., evolution. And Prabhupada very common sensely dismantled these arguments. So, if you find yourself having to argue with or dispute with atheists or scientists, then don't try to speak on their terms because they know their terms better than you do. They make up big words to describe things. And if there's something there which they can't describe or which they don't have evidence for, they give it a name, and then that makes it authoritative, such as punctuated equilibrium. Right, what does that mean? Anybody know? Yeah, it means, for so many years they're talking about the missing links and they're trying to find them. So finally they can't find them, so they just give it a name called punctuated equilibrium, which means that the species just jumped a few. So that means it's okay now. We don't have to look for it. We don't have the evidence, so we'll just give it a name. So in common terms, that would be called cheating, wouldn't it? We can't accept just because they don't have the evidence, we just give it a name. They say, oh, this is called missing evidence. But because they are in the field of so-called knowledge, then they're accepted as authoritative. And people talk about this like it's just an accepted fact. But this is all in bodily concept of life, considering the body to be the self. But the real self is actually that which is giving life to the body. So before we understand God, Prabhupada says, then first understand who you are. And he says, if you understand the self or the soul is like sample of God, sample God. So if you understand the sample, we can understand the whole. Just like if we understand the nature of some gold, then we take a sample from the gold mine and we see, okay, this is some gold, we know we can mine there. So, and then similarly, we understand the self. So what is the symptom of the self? What is the symptom of the soul? Consciousness. So when we consider that as a symptom of the soul, this is when Yamaraj here, in the form of a small boy, he's actually instructing these queens of this king who's just died. And of course, as we were saying before, we actually never die anyway. The body is never alive and the soul never dies. So this whole death concept is actually just, it doesn't really exist. The only real death is the ignorance of the soul of our real nature. So this message that Yamaraj in the form of the small boy is giving is the same instruction that Krishna is giving in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text 11. I saw Chanam so just from while speaking learned words. So what he's he's actually being a bit sarcastic. He's saying, "Why are you crying? He's still there. You know, what's the problem? He's still there." So he's kind of teasing them a bit, and they say, but he's not there. He's gone." No, he's not gone. He's there. The person you're related to is still there. That body, you think this is the person, you know, the king, whatever his name was. No disrespect, but I mean, I couldn't remember his name. So he's lying there dead, and they're crying. And say, "Oh, come on, wake up. Or why do you have to leave us?" But where's he gone? Who's left? The soul, the consciousness is no longer there. If you start beating on the body, it's not going to protest, is it? Even you see in the judicial system, if someone kills someone, for example, and then they continue to mutilate that body severely, then they're given even extra punishment for that. But the person's already gone. I'm not saying this is justifiable or anything, but because they don't understand that there's difference between the soul and the body, the real crime is, of course, the major inconvenience of causing a soul to leave its body. That's such a major inconvenience. It's not just like, you know, someone's stolen your parking place or someone's borrowed your shoes without asking. So this body is, for devotees, the body is a temple. That's how we decorate it with tilak, neck beads. This is a temple of Vishnu. And for the non-devotees, it's a temple of sense gratification. The senses are the most important things. If the senses are in any way hampered, then they want to get them fixed as soon as possible so that we can continue enjoying. And their enjoyment is natural, anandamaya, that we are pleasure seeking, we're looking for ananda. But the pleasure we find in the body is not ananda. It's simply relief from distress. So if you're in the desert and you're very thirsty and you finally come across an old seized up rusty tap, which has just occasionally got a little drip coming from it, you'll be lying underneath like that trying to catch the drip, and you'll be thinking, "Oh, this is nectar." You'll be feeling what do you experience? Relief. Right, because so this is the nature of material enjoyment. It's simply relief from distress, and we're flitting from one sense to another, listening to something, smelling something, tasting, seeing, touching. Because if we engage in one particular sense enjoyment for too long, then we become acclimatized to it, and then that enjoyment decreases. So we give that example, just like we pass a flower around. So someone gives you the flower which has been offered to the deities, we smell it, so we get purified because this has been touching the body of the Lord. But then if you don't pass it around, right, and say you just hang on to it for a bit and you keep smelling it, then after a few goes, then you don't smell it any longer. Senses become accustomed to it. But you pass it to the next person, they can smell it, the smell hasn't gone. So it's the very nature of sense gratification, the sense objects interacting with sense objects, creates some sensation, and after a while that sensation diminishes in its experience to the point where simply it just can become a habit. Just like if we take to any kind of intoxication, you take a certain amount and then you feel somewhat relief or pleasure. You take a bit more, and then a bit more, and then it becomes dangerous. It becomes a displeasure. You know, you can overdose, or you can throw up, or you can become nauseous, or some other kind of problem comes of that. But this is showing our real nature. Our nature is to want to enjoy unlimitedly, and we just can't do it with these material bodies, material senses, and sense objects. We have to go for a higher pleasure. In order to experience a higher pleasure, param drisva nivartate, we have to simultaneously give up the lower object and take to the positive object. So this is mentioned in the Sri Ishopanishad. One who knows the path of nescience and knowledge side by side then they can attain immortality. So that means knowing what to avoid and knowing what to accept. Pavriti-cha, nivritti-cha. What is the path to follow? What is the path to avoid? So this way, very clearly, it becomes apparent to us what is for our best benefit. So just as Krishna chastised Arjuna in the very beginning of the conversation, he says, basically chastised him, calling him a fool. And here also, Yamaraj is using the word mudha, means foolish person. Mudha also means ass or donkey. So why is the donkey considered foolish? All day long, he's working hard to get some grass or hay at the end of the day, and if he's lucky, maybe a carrot. But there's grass at the side of the road that he's walking up and down all day. And donkeys are stubborn enough. So this is the word muda is considered to be ass-like or donkey-like. The thing which is actually right before them, they're missing it. The grass is right before the donkey, but he's missing it. He's thinking the carrot on the end of the stick. That's what I want. Never mind this grass. But he's not. He's working hard all day. Just each step he's thinking he's getting closer to the carrot. And then he might, if he's lucky, he might be given the carrot at the end of the day, just so that he's got a little taste to continue the next day. So this is the whole world all over, that people have been exploited, working so hard, they can hardly even buy a place to live. They can hardly even buy a car, which they don't really want to buy, to go to a job they don't necessarily want to go to just really so hard to try to afford just to live. It's such an endeavour. And even if they think, oh, this is too much, let me just go and retire to the country, they can't even do that. They can't even go and buy a house in the country. So this type of control over the living entities is not necessarily creating happiness or creating some kind of goodwill, simply being exploited. But how do they keep them exploited? By allowing them to have some intoxications, allowing them to have some different distractions like video games, television, different types of entertainment, to keep them distracted, entertained. So entertained, basically, it's just like the magician. Hand is quicker than the eye, isn't it? While you're watching this hand doing something, you're distracting, you're doing something with this hand. Or I've never done any magic tricks, so I don't know, but it's all about the art of deception, isn't it? So this is what's going on in society. Everyone's being deceived into thinking that they're getting somewhere in life. All the while, they're forgetting what the real nature is and what the real wealth is, which is the satisfaction which can be achieved from engaging in service to the Supreme. And even before we get that far, just to understand who we are and why are we engaged in this rat race. What's the point? What's the point of it? What's the purpose of this? We're running around, as Prabhupada calls it, at breakneck speed. So if you go to, there's a place in between Glasgow and Edinburgh, a service station called Hart Hill Services. If you sit there between the hours of like 7 and 10 in the morning, you'll see thousands and thousands of cars going from east to west, and then thousands and thousands of cars going from west to east. And they're all going to jobs over there, and they're having to buy cars just to do what? To go to another city. So why don't they just move to that city and stop travelling a few hours every day, polluting the place, and save themselves the trouble of having a car? Of course, we have cars, but we're using it for a different purpose. We also print books, because this is the purpose of, if there's any purpose for printing a book, is to print transcendental subject matter. So people don't stop to think because they're so much struggling to survive. They actually don't have the time to stop and think. And even if they did, sometimes it would frighten them, so they choose not to. They'd prefer to stick their head in the sand and ignore their own plight because it's too painful to face up to. So this transcendental subject matter is actually meant for all of the human society. And it benefits not just humans, it benefits all other species, because when you become Krishna conscious, first of all, Prabhupada says, first become conscious and then become Krishna conscious. So what does that conscious mean? It means become aware of our surroundings and try to utilize everything respectfully, realizing that Krishna is the proprietor of everything. So let me use it in Krishna's service, let me take great care of it, let me be aware. So when we attempt to engage in devotional service, or when we're engaging in devotional service, then we're benefiting so many other living entities. It's not just meant for the human society. When we become conscious that we are a spirit soul, then we see that all the other living entities are also conscious living entities. The birds, they're conscious. When the bird lands on the ground, sometimes people think, oh, reincarnation, that sounds good. I'd like to be a bird flying free in the sky. No worries, right? Does it sound good? But other birds sometimes attack you. If you land on the ground, then what are you doing? You're looking around. Where's that cat? See if I can catch this worm before the cat catches me. And then the cat's coming along, he thinks he's the boss, and he might chase the bird away or catch the bird. But after he's finished with his bloodlust, then what he's afraid that a dog's going to come along. And the dog comes and chases him, but then a human comes along and chases the dog. So everyone's got some kind of predator. Nobody's free in this material world. And then if you kick somebody's dog because they chased your cat, some neighbour might come along and kick you. So this material is a very complicated place to live in. And the point we're just making is that nobody is free from the anxieties of life, no species. And we're all conscious. We're all conscious that we are in a precarious situation. We are not free from fear. So these are the four animal symptoms, isn't it? Eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So of these four animal propensities, eating, sleeping, mating, defending, Srila Prabhupada explains that we may have a very comfortable bed, even exaggerates to say you can sleep on a gold bed. Right, but when you're sleeping, you're not lying there thinking, I'm sleeping on a gold bed. You're dreaming you're somewhere else. You could be getting chased by a tiger in the jungle, for all we know. You're not thinking, oh, this gold bed is very nice. Maybe for a few minutes before you fall asleep. So when you're sleeping, you don't know where you are. And the dog that may sleep on the floor, even devotees sleep on the floor because they consider themselves Krishna's dog. We have our dog collar here to say this is, I'm Krishna's. Prabhupada in that regard says sometimes a big dog, it may have no owner and it may have a very loud bark, but a small dog with an owner is very confident because its owner standing behind it, so it's not afraid of the big dog. So he says in that regard, Krishna's behind us, we have the whole chain of spiritual masters behind us, and what we are representing is undefeatable. It's the topmost philosophy because it's just the facts of reality of what is this spiritual world, what is this material world, what is this material nature, who are we, how do we relate to all this. So this is philosophical facts, truths. So we can be confident, even we may not be a big powerful person ourselves, but we're representing something which is very powerful. So this sleeping thing, the animals are doing it, we're doing it, but we try to minimize it. We sleep enough so that the body can be fit to do its service. If we sleep too much, what happens? Become lazy, yeah, because we're associating with. Big Tamas, Big Tam Goon. Tamas Goon means mode of ignorance. And that happens, the more we surrender to sleep, it's also a form of trying to forget the difficulties of this material world. We want to forget it. And it's natural we want to forget it because it's an unnatural situation for the soul to be in. So we want to find a way out. But it's only a temporary relief is to take shelter and sleep. It doesn't actually solve it. And I've known a couple of people actually who slept many, many hours and they never felt refreshed when they got up. They actually felt tired because that's the nature of it. So if we sleep too little, though, then what happens? Yeah, the mind becomes very strong, and then we don't know the difference between reality and illusion, or between, sometimes we even know if we're awake or asleep. I remember one time I was very, very tired, and I was driving on Sankirtan, and in winter in Scotland or in the UK, when you go out in the morning early, it's dark, and when you come back, it's dark. I was so tired actually, and it was dark, and I couldn't tell whether I was going on Bukdish Bush now, whether I was coming back from it. All I was concerned about was fighting off the sleep. And then I thought, come to think of it, I don't even know if I'm in Scotland or in Yorkshire because I was spending so much time in both places. So you can lose touch with reality if you don't sleep enough. And that can affect your state of mind very much so. Either sleeping too much or not sleeping enough, it can affect your physical and mental health. So we try to sleep just enough that the body is rested. And if we're not sure, then Prabhupada gives basically we should sleep 6 hours a day. If you can manage on less, that's fine. If you need a little more, then sleep 6 and then take a little nap sometime later. Also, there's some study done that those who sleep less than 4 hours a day, this study was done over like 12 years or something with so many different candidates. And if you didn't sleep enough, then you were prone to heart attack, which was like 4 hours or less a day. And if you slept too much, you were like more than 7 hours a day, then you were prone to heart disease. So there may have been other things they discovered from that too. But this is what they surmised. And so therefore the devotees there in the kind of safe category in between. But at the same time, we're not simply concerned with the health of the body because we know we're not going to be able to extend the life of this body indefinitely. But still, while we're, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, one cannot be a yogi. When we talk about yoga, we're not talking about simply doing asanas and pranayama, breathing exercise. We're talking about bhakti yogi, connected to the divine, connected to Krishna. One cannot be yogi if they sleep too much, don't sleep enough, eat too much or eat too little. So if we eat too much, then sometimes what happens if we eat too much? Sleep too much. If you sleep too much, then you think of sex life. You dream too much. That's how it works. And if you don't eat enough, what can happen? Weak. We become physically weak, yeah? Can do that. Anything else? Yeah, the mind can become very strong. Just like when we're fasting, right? Sometimes we do fasts. We used to do dry fast for Ekadashi, every Ekadashi. And without fail, practically, about 7 o'clock in the evening, the only topic of conversation would be all your favourite foods. You're practically doing everything but getting the cookbook out to read from it. Shri Kurma Uvacha. And then you're saying, 1 tablespoonful of ghee, a half teaspoon of cumin seed. This becomes a sloka. And then the purport is the method. And then finally the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Yeah, so if we're artificially giving up eating, then that can also develop pride. Just see, I'm so austere. I don't eat much. Just like there was one Bhogi yogi, A bogi yogi doesn't just mean bogus yogi, but bogi means boga, sense enjoyment, bhoktaram, not bhoktaram, bogeshwaram prasaktanam, yeah. So a bogi yogi means one who is supposed to be a yogi, but actually secretly they're a sense enjoyer. So there was this so-called yogi who was staying with a family, and they were saying, "Oh, Swamiji would like to cook for you." No, simply I'll just take one leaf. Oh, he's so austere, the Swamiji. So then everybody goes to bed at night and they hear some noise, and the husband thinks, oh, maybe somebody's broken into the house, and they go down and see Swami reading the fridge. So we have to be honest with our situation. And with us, actually, because we're eating prasadam, I remember one devotee had a problem with overeating, and Mother Ratnaranjini, who's Prabhupada disciple, used to live here, she says, well, what's the problem with prasadam? Just eat your way back to Godhead. It's purifying. So he had, and Prabhupada also said, in the beginning of Krishna consciousness, for the first 6 months, eat up to the neck. Because we're giving up so many things, prasadam is the only thing we've got left, in terms of sense enjoyment in that respect. And of course, as time goes on, then we can diminish that, but some of us have been on the first 6 months for like 20 years. He said you should walk away from the prasadam table waddling like a duck. So, of course, we're not necessarily encouraging gluttony, but the whole concept of this is that because we're so attached to so many different types of sense gratification, then we need to keep the mind happy, we need to subdue some. So we take Krishna Prasad. Krishna Prasad is not just nice tasting food, it's Krishna in the form of food. It's been not food which is offered to Krishna, and by his grace, then it becomes sanctified food, it becomes Prasad, mercy. So in the devotee lifestyle, we have a good regulation of sleep, and we have the best foodstuff in the world. Even if sometimes somebody forgets to put salt in the kitchery, it's still prasadam. They say you shouldn't criticize prasadam. You can criticize the cook, but not the prasadam. And then eating, sleeping, mating, right? So the mating is going on in all species. But Prabhupada says that, and even within Krishna consciousness, there's some allowance for that, but it's regulated also. When it's unregulated, then so much difficulty comes from that. Disease, broken homes, so many trouble, unwanted children that don't even make it out of the womb. So this unrestricted sex life that's not meant for human form of life is meant to be civilized. And within, so the idea is to bring that down to a minimum. So sex desire is considered to be like an itch. You ever have an itch and you scratch it, and then it seems to go away, but then it comes somewhere else and you're scratching it there, and then you're scratching here, just forever trying to scratch it. So, or if you ever had a mosquito bite, right? And I discovered that if you've got a mosquito bite, if you can resist the urge to scratch it, because it's very itchy, then it goes. And it might take a week or two before it finally goes, but if on the last day you scratch it again, then it's there for another 2 weeks. And then you can scratch it until it becomes an open wound if you're not careful. Sometimes you just get, you go mad with scratching if you get many, many mosquito bites. Once I was staying at Govardhan, and it was very hot, so I was sleeping in the charpai. Charpai is these kind of string beds, and they seem to be kind of built for people that are about 4 foot tall for some reason. You always have your legs are hanging over the end of it. Maybe that's just the one that I slept in. And so I knew there was a lot of mosquitoes around, so I kind of covered myself, but on the backs of my legs were not covered, so the mosquitoes had a feast that night, and I counted there were at least 30 bites on my legs. So that was quite intense, just trying not to scratch those for some time. So this is the sex urge as well. When we scratch it by engaging in sexual activity, then it just keeps that itch going, keeps it going. But if we can resist it, but not just resist it, but engage in activities which are taking our mind off of that. So this is the whole thing about Krishna consciousness. It's just not some dry abnegation. It's not just giving up the something without having something in return. We're simultaneously giving up something and doing something positive. This is the positive alternative. There's so many movements going on in the world in protest of the establishment, and it's good that they have some protest against establishment, but what they are doing to resist it or to protest against it is not necessarily a positive alternative. It's just creating another problem. So just like, for example, you say, okay, I'll give up sex desire by going out bashing people over the head with a shovel. I'm just being, wild example. It takes my mind off of it. Not asking any of the monks to go and do that today. But I was feeling a bit agitated as I went and bashed a few people on the head, just like you said in class. But first thing that came to mind just shows you where my mind's at, doesn't it? I seen a shovel over there in the back wall. Yeah, sorry, okay. But in Krishna consciousness, we wouldn't do that. We'd take the shovel and dig a hole for Krishna and plant some flowers. So anyway, the point is that sometimes the things that people do in protest or alternative to the establishment just become some other kind of concocted thing which has got no real sense or consequence to it. Whereas what is being offered here in Krishna consciousness is, okay, yeah, you want to enjoy, but you don't know how to enjoy. What you're trying to enjoy is causing misery for you. Maybe you're enjoying temporarily now, but there's a reaction for everything you do, and it's going to come back to you. You can't escape it. It's a natural law. Just like something falls from the sky, it's not that everything which falls from a height doesn't drop. It's not like some things don't drop. Even a feather, it will drop eventually. It's a natural law of gravity there. So similarly, the law of karma is there. We do something and there's a reaction for it. But the beauty of Krishna consciousness and the mercy of Krishna is that even if we have done so many nonsense things in the past, when we come to Krishna, all that can be eradicated and we get a fresh start. Krishna says, forget all that, just come to me. Sarvadharma prityaja mamikam sharanam braja aham tvam sarva papibhyo mokshayishami masicha. Abandon all varieties of religion. So when Krishna says this, he doesn't mean to say become irreligious. But what is he meaning by abandon all varieties of religion? What does he mean? Sorry?
Not be fanatic about rules. Kind of like not being fanatic about rules and kind of like
Yeah, that's part of it. Is sometimes people follow rules and regulations without knowing the purpose behind them. So it's very good if we're following rules and regulations, but unless we know what is the purpose for following them, then we might just become distracted or we might give up if it's not happening quick enough. Just like nowadays, the allopathic medicine is simply just meant to deal with the symptoms, just so that you feel better, so you can get back onto that conveyor belt of sense enjoyment, get back out and spend your money, get back out and work and spend your money. So anything else regarding this abandon all varieties of religion?
Like there's many processes of self-realization which aren't fully complete, like jnana yoga, karma yoga, ashtanga yoga, etc. And throughout the world there's many different processes, but just abandon all these different and just take shelter of Krishna directly.
Exactly. Because Krishna says, Yoginam api sarvisham madhyatena pratmana sharavan bhajate yomam sami yuktatamo mataha. And of all yogis, so we've got karma yoga, someone who tries to connect with Krishna, or someone who simply just wants to have a better life next time round. They do some sacrifices or some austerities, and they deprive themselves of things in this life for a better reward in the next life. So that's just like investing money in the bank for a bigger return. It's still a selfish motivation. So Krishna says, of all yogis, and the jnana yogi, what's the jnana yogi? He becomes proud of his knowledge, right? And, I'm so learned, and people say, oh, Panditji, you're amazing. Yes, I'm the most humble. This is there's a danger in having so much knowledge without humility. The real fruit of knowledge is humility. If one is proud because of their knowledge, then their knowledge hasn't served them well. And of all yogis, one who is most intimately, how's the English go? Intimately united with me, and he's the highest of all. So basically, anyway, Krishna's talking about the Bhakti yogi. So all these other things are leading, culminating in Bhakti yoga, devotional service, connecting to Krishna through Bhakti. And we're actually so fortunate that we're not spending lifetimes, maybe we have already spent lifetimes pursuing these other types of yoga, but here we are now. We come to Bhakti yoga, which is a direct thing. It's directly dealing with the boss. We're not going through some filling in a form to get the job. We're speaking to the boss directly, and he's okay. Just do this, and you'll get in. You get the job. You get a job in the spiritual world. If you just chant Hare Krishna, follow his regs, and go and spread some Krishna consciousness to others. Chant in the street, give out books, give out prasad, and then you'll come to me at the end. Because we'll be thinking of Krishna, whatever yam yam vapi smram bhavam, whatever we think of at the time of death, then that we will attain without fail. Krishna says without fail, so that means he's not leaving any doubts. Like, well, Krishna said that, but maybe I'll be okay at the end. I'll just think of something else quickly, and I won't have to go become a dog because I've been acting like a dog. I'll just quickly think of Krishna, and then I'll be okay. So whatever we're thinking throughout our whole life, that is our attachment. And that's what we'll naturally go to, because at the time of death, when we're leaving the body, we try to take shelter in what we're most attached to. And those things which we took shelter in will not be serving us. We'll realize that actually it was a waste of a life. So we don't want to waste this life. Learn to take shelter in Krishna. Abandon all variety of religion and surrender unto me. So he says, if you surrender unto me directly, do not fear. So we're afraid to surrender. That's why we don't. We think we're going to lose something, isn't it? We're attached, and from attachment becomes fear. Vita raga bhaya krodha. From vita, attachment, raga. Vita becomes free from, so raga, attachment, vita raga bhaya, fear, and krodha. So we're attached, and we're afraid to lose attachment, and if someone interferes with that attachment, we become angry with them, isn't it? Even if we don't have much, if someone interferes with that stuff, then we get angry with them. We see that even in a child. They don't have to be taught this. It's already there from previous lives. Children playing with their toys, another child comes to take their toy, and then there's like, that's mine, leave it alone. This aham mameti, this false concept of whatever I survey as mine, or I'm going to make everything mine. The human race, the race to see who can accumulate so much. But this accumulation is actually such a burden. So of all these different things, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, then, like Prabhupada explains, that the animal has its claws, and it has 4 claws, has its teeth, etc., has different forms of defense. And in nature, there's some quite weird and wonderful forms of defense. What do the humans do? They think they're more advanced than animals. They go from spears to bow and arrows to guns to rockets to so many different germ warfare. They think it's so advanced. But what is it? It's simply defending, that's all. And what are they defending? Eating, sleeping, mating. And their false sense of proprietorship. That this is my land, don't cross over that imaginary line there, but we put a fence on because your land is there. But the grass looks the same colour. No, this is Scottish, that's English. Can't you tell the difference? There's no difference. It's just in our mind, these mental concoctions, and then we draw a map, and then everybody agrees, okay, this is it. And then some people don't agree, think, oh yeah, but that used to be ours, so we want it back. But it was never yours. This world was here before we came along. It'll be here when we've gone. And in the middle, we come along and we fight over this false sense of proprietorship, either with our next door neighbour or with our roommate, in the ashram even. Hopefully not so much. And with countries, you know, and if we go to other planets and we find life there, we'll be fighting with them as well. You see, even these science fiction movies, as soon as some alien shows, then they want to fire a gun at it, isn't it? We don't choose to think, well, maybe we could benefit by being friends here. The mentality is just always, it's called the barking dog syndrome, right? Prabhupada was going from one country to another, and at the immigrations, Prabhupada says, they're just like barking dogs. Woof, woof, who are you? Why are you here? What do you want? And so dogs are very territorial. You know, you see the dog within the house and its garden and the gate's there. And they have to put the gate there so it knows where to stop. Otherwise, the neighbours will be the owner will be in trouble. And the dog runs up to the gate and barks at you. And there was, okay, I've mentioned it before, but it's relevant. Prabhupada was in a morning walk, and you can hear he's talking with the devotees, questions and answers. And you hear this little yap, 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 yap. This little dog, you can tell it's a little yapper. And it's getting louder and louder, coming up to the fence, and then it stops. And then Prabhupada is barking away. Prabhupada stops the walk, and he turns around and looks at it. And then you hear the dog going, yap, 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 yap. It's barking, and it's running away. So Prabhupada mimics the dog. He says, I'm not afraid of you. Although I'm running away, I'm not afraid of you. So this is a situation. The human beings are not acting like human beings. There's so much fear individually, collectively, nationally, internationally, globally, and if there was a chance, you know, even beyond that. We see in the pages of the Bhagavatam, between the demons and the demigods, there's always fighting going on. So this is the material world. There's always two types of people, divine and demoniac. And we have the opportunity to become divine. And that becoming divine is actually just disassociating ourselves from that which is distracting us from that inherent divine nature which is already there. We practice Krishna consciousness, it's only reawakening what is already there. It's just uncovering, it's removing the coverings of tamas, ignorance, and raja, passion, and simply ultimately leaving the pure spirit soul. So this behavior of these queens, they're lamenting for the body which is still there. So he's pointing out, what you're crying for, he's still there. And so he's basically come to the point to show them that who you're lamenting for wasn't the body, it was a person within the body. And this is the skin disease which everybody in the planet is practically suffering from. They're looking at the skin thinking this is a person. And they're not seeing beyond it. And they have whole industries based on this. It's, so therefore in Kali Yuga, someone can be serving their dog by feeding it. The dog is serving the owner by I don't have the like full devotion. So practice makes perfect. we just continue to practice it. It's a practice of devotional service. And then in due course of time, then there's no difference between what we're doing, what we're thinking, and what is the activity. It's all completely aligned. That's called Bhakti Yoga. So to begin with, it's called Sadhana Bhakti. That's sometimes translated as the means by which we can attain something. So, like, for example, the impersonalists, their means is very stringent rules, regulations, control of the senses, a lot of sense denial, etc. like that. They can be really, really austere. It's they can sometimes even you can see they'll sit in the midday sun with fires all around them, burning and showing how to tolerate the mind and the senses. So they can be extremely tolerant and very powerful like that. But what is the motivation behind it? That's the thing. And for us, then simply we don't have to do unnecessary austerities. We engage in devotional service, and whatever austerities come in the business of doing our devotional service, then we just accept and we carry on. And sometimes you do some service and things are fine. Another day you do it and everything seems so difficult and you're doing the same thing externally. That's because internally we're going through some purification, or there may be some other things there which are challenging. And Srila Prabhupada says in that respect that devotional service begins when things become difficult. So because in order to be devotional, to show our love for Krishna more and more, then we have to show we're not just a fair weather friend of Krishna. When everything's good, when we're jumping up down, shouting Haribol and there's a feast, and that's it, I'm a devotee. As soon as there's any difficulty, then I'm off. So if we find ourselves in that position and you're struggling, then also it's to teach us to become humble, to take shelter in someone devotee to help us to get through it, because we cannot conquer Maya on our own. We have to get the shelter of Krishna, and that often means getting the instructions and shelter of a devotee to help us get through that. Is that okay? We could give a whole class on that, but we'll just give a short talk. Anything in from anyone else? Any other comments on that question? Okay, it's Guru ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Nitai Gaur Premanandi Haribol.